The crowd surged forward as the ground beneath Mama Adanma's stall cracked open. A buried calabash burst from the soil, spilling ash into the wind. Children screamed. Men stepped back in fear. Mama Adanma stood frozen, wooden spoon trembling in her hand. The massive Iroko tree behind her groaned as its roots twisted upward like living veins. And in that moment, the village realized the woman who fed them every day had been feeding something else.
The first scream came before the sun. It tore through the village like a knife through wet cloth. By the time the cock crowed, everyone already knew something terrible had happened at the center square, the place where the rice always smelled sweetest. And at the center of it all was Mama Adanma. Every village has its heartbeat. For Umuokoro, the heartbeat was a wide, dusty square beneath an ancient Iroko tree. Women sold vegetables, children chased tires with sticks. Men argued over palm wine, and every afternoon, thick clouds of steam would rise from a large black pot near the tree. That was where Mama Adanma cooked. She was an ordinary woman, soft-spoken, always wrapped in bright ankara, her laughter deep and warm. Her rice and stew were famous beyond neighboring villages. Travelers stopped just to eat a plate. People said her stew tasted like memory, like comfort, like home. But no one could explain how she rose from almost nothing to becoming the most powerful food seller in the region in just 3 months. 3 months. That was how long it took. Before that, Mama Adanma struggled. Her stall used to sit quietly at the edge of the square. Some days she sold nothing. Children would mock her gently, calling out, "Mama, today again no customer?" She would smile and wave them off. But at night, she cried. Because rice was expensive, firewood was scarce, and hunger does not respect pride, then one night everything changed. And in Umuokoro, the forest listens. The forest behind the village was older than memory. Elders said it existed before the first hut was built, before the Iroko tree grew, before even the name Umuokoro was spoken. They called it Alanikpa, the forest that answers. Most people laughed at such stories. Mama Adanma did not. Because the next evening, as she sat alone outside her hut, an old woman appeared. No
You
footsteps,
called me?
no warning, just there. Her back was bent like a broken branch. Her eyes shone strangely bright. "You called," the old woman said. Mama Adanma's throat went dry. "I called no one." The old woman smiled slowly. "When desperation speaks, we hear." The old woman introduced herself as Ne Udo. She claimed to live deep inside Alanakpa. She spoke softly, but every word felt heavy. "You cook well," she said, "but skill is nothing without attraction." Mama Adanma's heart pounded. "What do you mean?" "There are forces that pull people," Neudo whispered, "for love, for power, for hunger." She leaned closer. "I can make them crave your food." Silence. Thunder rolled in the distance. "What will it cost?" Mama Adanma asked. The old woman's smile faded. "Nothing is free." 3 nights later, Mama Adanma followed her into the forest. The deeper they walked, the quieter it became. No crickets, no wind, no birds, only their footsteps. They reached a clearing where 3 stones formed a triangle. At the center lay a small black pot. "Every gift must be tied to something personal," Neudo explained. "Hair, blood, a memory." Mama Adanma hesitated. "I don't want to hurt anyone." "You won't," the old woman said calmly. "They will simply desire." Desire. Such an innocent word. Mama Adanma gave strands of her hair, a drop of blood, and something else. Her laughter. Her laughter. Neudo told her to speak into the pot her happiest childhood memory. She described cooking beside her mother, the smell of stew, the joy of sharing food. As she spoke, the pot began to steam. But something strange happened. The steam did not rise upward. It circled her face, then sank into her chest. Mama Adanma gasped. Neudo's eyes gleamed. "It is done." But there was a condition. Every night before market day, Mama Adanma must return to the clearing and renew the bond, feed the fire, whisper gratitude, and bury a small portion of the day's earnings in the soil. "If you stop," Neudo warned, "the hunger will reverse." "What does that mean?" The old woman did not answer. At first, everything felt like a miracle. Customers multiplied, money flowed, even neighboring villages sent buyers. Mama Adanma laughed again. but the laughter sounded thinner, distant. She didn't notice at first, until one morning she tried to laugh at a joke. And nothing came out, only air. The cravings in the village grew stronger. People dreamed of rice, woke up thinking about stew, argued with family just to eat at her stall. Some began hiding portions under their beds. Others woke at midnight, walking toward the square unconsciously. The stranger, the man with the carved staff, arrived during this time. His name was Obinna. He was not a trader. He was not a traveler. He was a seeker of distortions. And Umuokoro was beginning to distort. Obinna had seen villages fall before, not from war, but from subtle corruption. He tasted Mama Adanma's rice and felt the thread immediately. It wasn't poison. It was attachment magic, old, forest-born, dangerous when overused. He followed her the first night and confirmed his fear. But what disturbed him most was not the ritual, it was Ne Udo, because he knew that name, and Ne Udo had died 50 years ago. Meanwhile, Mama Adanma began noticing changes. Food spoiled faster in other stalls, dogs avoided her shadow, children stared at her strangely. One night in the forest she confronted Ne Udo. "Something is wrong," she said. The old woman tilted her head. "Success is heavy. I feel weaker. That is balance. What happens if I stop?" The forest suddenly grew colder. Ne Udo's voice dropped lower. "If you stop feeding the bond, the desire turns to disgust." Mama Adanma froze. "They will hate you as deeply as they once loved you." "And you?" The old woman smiled again. "I collect what is owed." Back in the village, Obinna began preparing. He spoke quietly to the chief, watched patterns, waited for proof strong enough to awaken the people. But magic does not unravel slowly. Mama Adanma served them calmly, but her hands trembled slightly because magic always demands payment. Days passed. The stranger kept watching. He noticed something else. The more customers she attracted, the weaker she became. Dark circles under her eyes, hands shaking, occasional nosebleeds, yet she continued. Why? Because poverty is a louder fear than danger. Meanwhile, other food sellers began whispering, "Something is wrong. This is not normal. My customers say they dream about her food." Even the village chief heard rumors. But without proof, what could they do? Then came the child. Little Chica, only 7 years old. She ate the rice one afternoon. That night she began to speak in her sleep, in a voice that was not her own. Her mother ran through the village screaming, and by dawn the crowd gathered at the square, angry, afraid, demanding answers. Mama Adanma stood behind her pot, silent. The stranger stepped forward. "This food is tied with a calling spirit," he said. Gasps filled the air. He pointed to the ground near her stall. "Dig there." The men hesitated, but the chief ordered it. They dug and found a buried calabash filled with ash, hair strands, and strange markings. The crowd exploded. "You used us. You fed our children magic. You cursed the village." Mama Adanma fell to her knees, tears streaming. "I only wanted to survive," she cried. "I was tired of hunger." But survival built on darkness carries consequences. The chief declared judgment. She would be publicly shamed and banished, her stall destroyed, her pots broken, the rice scattered into the dust. As villagers watched, her cooking space, once the pride of Umuokoro, was torn apart, not violently, but deliberately, symbolically cut off from the village. The smoke that once fed them no longer rose, only silence remained. It snaps. And it snapped the day little Chica ate too much, because children are more sensitive to spiritual threads. Her small body reacted violently to the attachment force, and when she began speaking in another tone, the village could no longer ignore it. What no one knew was this: the night before the public disgrace, Mama Adanma went to the forest to end it. She fell to her knees before the black pot. "I don't want this anymore," she cried. "I will accept poverty." The wind roared instantly, the candles blew out, and Nene Udo appeared, not bent this time, tall, shadowed, eyes glowing unnaturally bright. You signed with hunger, the spirit hissed. You fed on desire. I want out. You are out, Neudo replied coldly, and somewhere in the village, the buried calabash cracked open on its own. The next morning was chaos, the digging, the discovery, the disgrace. Everything unfolded as if guided by invisible hands, because it was. Neudo had released the reverse hunger, and when desire flips, it becomes fury. As Mama Adama was led away from Umokoro, she looked once toward the forest, and in the distance, near the tree line, she saw Neudo watching, smiling, because the debt was not fully paid, not yet. And Obina understood something terrifying. This was never about rice. It was about expanding influence. The forest was spreading through craving, and Mama Adanma was only the beginning. Back in the village, strange things began happening, not dramatic, subtle. The iroko tree at the square began shedding leaves out of season. Water from the stream tasted slightly bitter. At night, several villagers reported the same dream. They were standing in line for rice. But the pot was empty, and when they looked up, the one serving them had no face. Obina did not wait. He gathered the chief and elders. "This is no longer about one woman," he said. "You cut the branch, the root remains." The chief's voice trembled. "What must we do?" "We must close what she opened." "And how?" Obina looked toward the forest. "With truth." That night, 3 goats were found lifeless near the forest edge. No wounds, no blood, just drained. The air itself felt heavier. The forest was feeding. Without the ritual rice to carry its thread into the village, it began pulling directly. Weaker sources first. Animals. Soon, it would try people. In the clearing, Mama Adanma stood her ground. "You said I owed you," she told Neudo. "What is left to take?" The spirit's eyes gleamed. "Your name." Suddenly, Mama Adanma felt something slipping. Memories flickered. Her mother's face, her childhood hut, her own reflection, blurring. "If I erase you," Neudo whispered, "the village will forget you ever existed." That was the true payment. Not death, erasure, to have lived and never be remembered. The night Mama Adanma was banished, the forest did not sleep. It breathed, slow, heavy, watching. Umokoro thought the nightmare was over. The calabash had been burned, her stall destroyed, her name spat out like a curse. People felt relief, temporary relief. Because the next morning, no one woke up hungry, not normal hunger. There was something missing, a sharp emptiness, as if flavor itself had left the village. Other food sellers tried their best. They cooked more, added more spice, priced cheaper. Still, people ate without satisfaction. Children pushed plates away, men complained, women whispered, "It doesn't taste right anymore. It feels empty." They had broken the source, but not the thread. Meanwhile, Mama Adama did not head toward another village. She walked into the forest, straight, unafraid, because when you are already disgraced, fear loses power. The deeper she went, the darker it became, until she reached the clearing. But the clearing had changed. The 3 stones were cracked. The black pot was gone. In its place stood Neudo, not pretending anymore, no bent back, no wrinkled skin. She was tall, unnaturally tall. Her shadow stretched wrong, moving even when she stood still. "You came back," the spirit said. "You ruined my life," Mama Danma replied. "The forest trembled softly. I offered you survival. You took my laughter." Neudo stepped closer. "I took your innocence." Silence. And then the truth began to unfold. Neudo was not a dead woman. She was not even human. She was an echo, an old hunger born from forgotten sacrifices. Long before Umuokoro existed, the land had demanded offerings for prosperity. Crops, animals, sometimes more. When people stopped feeding the forest, the hunger did not disappear. It adapted. It learned to hide inside desire. And Mama Adanma had unknowingly reopened the door. "You were perfect," Neudo continued calmly. "Kind, desperate, skilled. A doorway." Mama Adanma's breath shook. "What do you want? To expand?" Mama Adanma screamed, not in fear but anger. "You feed on craving," she realized, "but craving weakens when exposed." Neudo paused, small but noticeable. "You only grow in secrecy." The forest wind rose violently. "You think disgrace harmed you?" The spirit roared. "It strengthened me. Their hatred is also hunger." And that was the darkest truth. Desire, disgust, love, fury, all forms of attachment, all energy. Back in Umokoro, Obinna began a ritual of his own, but his was not secretive. He gathered the villagers at the square. No more whispers, he commanded. No more denial. He made them speak aloud. We chose greed. We ignored warning signs. We craved without question. As each confession rose, the air shifted slightly, because the opposite of hidden hunger is exposed truth. In the forest, Udo began to lose shape. Her shadow flickered. You cannot undo this, she hissed. Mama Adanma stood straighter. I can refuse to feed it. The spirit lunged forward, but stopped, frozen, because something had changed. The villagers were no longer craving, they were confronting, and hunger without secrecy starves. The clearing cracked open, the soil split, the black pot re-emerged from underground, shattered. Udo's form fractured like smoke in wind. You will always hunger, she shrieked. It is human. Yes, Mama Adanma whispered, but we choose what feeds us. With that, the forest exhaled, as Nene Udo dissolved into mist, not destroyed but weakened, very weakened. Dawn broke gently. In Umuokoro, people woke up, hungry, normal hunger, simple, clean. The bitterness in the stream disappeared. The Iroko tree stood still. Animals returned near the forest edge. Mama Adanma did not return to the village immediately. She remained at the clearing, alone, exhausted but lighter. Her laughter returned slowly, soft at first, then real. Days later, she walked back to Umokoro, not with a pot, not with magic, just herself. The villagers fell silent when they saw her. Shame passed between them both ways. The chief stepped forward. We were wrong to crave blindly. She nodded. I was wrong to feed it. Silence. Then something unexpected happened. An old woman from the crowd brought her a small bag of rice. Another brought tomatoes. A man brought firewood. No one spoke. But together, they rebuilt her stall. No rituals, no secrets, no midnight forest visits, just cooking. This time, when the steam rose, it smelled like effort, not enchantment. And when people lined up, it was by choice. But deep in Alankpa, a thin thread of mist still lingered, watching, waiting, because hunger never truly dies, it only sleeps. For weeks, Umuokoro believed the nightmare had ended. The forest grew quiet. The stream ran clear. Mama Adanma cooked without rituals. Laughter returned to the square, and Obinna prepared to leave. I think it's over, the chief told him one evening beneath the Iroko tree. Obinna did not answer immediately. He was watching the smoke rising from Mama Adanma's pot. It rose straight into the sky. Too straight. No wind touched it. That night, Obinna could not sleep. He walked through the village in silence. Everything looked normal, but normal is sometimes the best disguise. He reached the center square. The ashes from Mama Adanma's fire still glowed faintly. And then he saw it. In the dust around her stall, footprints, barefoot, leading toward the forest, fresh. Mama Adanma had not told anyone she was returning there, because she didn't plan to, at least that's what she told herself. But something had been calling her again. Not a voice, not words, a pull, a craving, not for power, not for money, for belonging. When she reached the clearing of Alaninkpa, it looked peaceful. No cracked stones, no shadow figure, no black pot, just silence. She exhaled. I didn't come to feed you, she said softly. The forest did not answer. Instead, it showed her something. On the ground lay an old cooking spoon, her mother's spoon, the one she lost years ago. Her chest tightened. That's not possible. But there it was. Real. Familiar. Warm to the touch. The forest had learned. It no longer tempted her with customers. It tempted her with memory. Back in the village, something subtle began again. Not obsession, not rage, just preference. People started saying her food tastes even better now. I don't know why, but it feels deeper. They weren't compelled. They chose her, every time. Other food sellers slowly began losing customers again, but this time no one complained, because nothing felt unnatural, it felt deserved. That was the difference, and that was the danger. Obinna noticed it first. Patterns repeating. Not extreme, not obvious, but steady. He watched Mama Adanma closely. She laughed more now, too easily. Her eyes sometimes seemed distant, as if listening to something beyond conversation. One evening he confronted her quietly. Have you returned to the forest? She hesitated, just for a second. No. The lie was soft, almost believable. But Obinna had hunted distortions long enough. Be careful, he warned. Hunger adapts. She smiled gently. I am not desperate anymore. That's not what I'm afraid of. That night, Mama Adanma stood once more in the clearing, holding her mother's spoon. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. The forest shimmered. And this time Neudo did not appear as a separate being. Instead, the trees themselves seemed to breathe. The voice came from everywhere. You misunderstand. I am not hunger. I am balance. Mama Adanma's pulse quickened. When you were poor, you suffered. When you used me, they suffered. When you rejected me, everything weakened. She felt it now, a quiet truth beneath the manipulation. The village had thrived when her stall thrived. Trade increased. Visitors came. Money circulated. Even after the disgrace, when she returned naturally, prosperity followed her again. You are not my victim, the forest whispered. You are my bridge.
Back in Umuokoro, something chilling occurred. The old Iroko tree began growing faster. Not taller. Wider. Its roots pushing slightly upward through the soil near the square, cracking the earth around Mama Adanma's stall. But no one panicked. They simply moved their feet aside. Adapted. Accepted. Obinna finally understood the true horror. The spirit was never meant to control true obsession forever. It evolved. It shifted from compulsion to influence, from magic to system. The forest no longer needed rituals. It had integration. True Mama Adanma. True admiration. True economic reliance. If she left again, the village would collapse financially. If she stayed, the forest remained connected. Either way, the thread survived. One final night, Obinna went alone into Olenpa. He found her standing calmly in the clearing. Not frightened. Not desperate. Serene. You know now,
Yes, you
she
were never
said before he
escaping it.
could
No,
speak.
I was chosen. You could still break it
Yes,
and doom
he
the village.
replied. You were never escaping it. She shook her head slowly. No. I was chosen. Silence settled between them. You could still break it, Obinna said. And doom the village? She asked quietly. He had no answer. Because she was right. The prosperity felt real. The food was no longer enchanted. But something deeper had rooted itself. Influence without visibility. Power without spectacle. The most dangerous kind. Does it control you? Obinna asked. Mama Adanma looked toward the trees. No, she said. Then added softly. We cooperate. The forest wind moved gently. Almost approving. Months later, Obinna left Umuokoro. But before he did, he looked back one last time. The square was lively. Children laughing. Smoke rising. Trade flourishing. Mama Adanma stood at the center. Respected. Admired. Essential. And beneath the soil, the Iroko roots pulsed slowly outward, expanding beyond the village border, toward neighboring lands, toward other markets, other centers, other desperate hearts. Years passed. Travelers began speaking of a region where one village's food trade dominated all others, where prosperity seemed to follow one woman's influence, where forests grew thicker around expanding settlements. No one spoke of black pots anymore. No green flames. No midnight rituals. Just success. Just admiration. Just dependence. And deep in the oldest part of Olenpa, a whisper still moved through the roots. Hunger is patient. And somewhere in the busy center of Umuokoro, Mama Adanma sometimes paused while stirring her stew. Just for a moment. as if listening. Then she would smile slightly and continue cooking. The end. Mama Adama's journey is not the story of a woman possessed by a spirit. It is the story of a woman who became a bridge between hunger and prosperity. At first, she sought survival. Then she tasted success. Then she discovered that influence can grow deeper than magic. The forest did not conquer her with force. It partnered with her true need, admiration, and dependence. By giving strands of her hair, a drop of blood, and even her laughter, she did not just perform a ritual, she surrendered pieces of herself in exchange for power and stability. And in doing so, something subtle but permanent took root. Not control. Integration. The village prospered. Trade flourished. No one suffered visibly. But beneath the soil, influence spread quietly. Thanks for watching to the end. Please like, comment and subscribe for more interesting stories.